Hi, I'm Arnold Cross. For many years, I've considered cookies and milk to be a perfectly good option for breakfast, on par with cereal and milk. If I gently place a cookie on top of the milk and watch it, when the cookie starts to sink, that's when it's ready to eat. So this cookie's almost there, and there it goes. That cookie is perfect to eat. There I put my cookie on the milk, and I'm watching the cookie, and I'm thinking about how quickly I want to get to work. And I'm watching the cookie. Cookie starts to sink. Okay, well, not quite yet. All right, well, that cookie's ready to eat. And then I put the next cookie on the milk, and the same thing. And so I'm watching the cookie. I look at the clock, look at the cookie, look at the clock, cookie clock, and I found that I was spending 50% of my time at least just watching the cookies. I designed something that makes it more efficient. This is my design. I call it the Cookie Canoe. It holds about the same amount of milk as a coffee cup. Now I'll demonstrate how you use the Cookie Canoe to eat cookies and milk efficiently. So there'll be a period of less than a minute when you'll just be sitting there watching me eat. Okay, so the way this starts is you put a cookie in, and as that's soaking up milk, you can slide another cookie in, and this Cookie Canoe can actually accommodate 3 cookies. That one's ready to be eaten. So the process continues like that, and as you can see, there's no waiting for cookies to soak up milk. It's a continuous, almost like an assembly line kind of process. And so you can much more quickly finish breakfast and get on with your day. Now when you get down to the last of the milk, so here is a Cookie Canoe with exactly 1 ounce of milk. I can put a cookie in there, and we see that the milk is constrained to an area roughly what a coffee cup would constrain the milk to, although it does come out a little bit on this side where the sloped floor is, but it's close to constraining to the same area. And so the cookie actually goes down into the milk, and it's soaking up the milk. And then after you eat that cookie, we see that there's still a little bit of milk in there. Potentially I could add another cookie to soak up the rest of the milk. Or just like you might with a coffee cup, you can pick up the Cookie Canoe and drink from it. So now I'll point out the distinguishing features of the Cookie Canoe using this 3D printed model and some terms that I define in my application. To avoid specifying numeric dimensions, I define the term food item of specific size, which is a food item that is normally consumed one at a time and is produced with consistency in its dimensions. This is a common size for commercially sold cookies, and it's the size that every Cookie Canoe I've made to date has been designed for. To relate the structure of the Cookie Canoe to the size of the cookie, I use the term accommodate. So for the width of the Cookie Canoe, the cookie needs to be guided from one end to the other. So I define accommodate as a condition in which lateral movement of a single food item is restricted. So that's saying that the cookie can't really go anywhere side to side. Or I guess more importantly, is that one cookie can't go around another side to side. Now, in the length dimension, the length of the Cookie Canoe needs to accommodate at least 2 cookies. That's really the point of the Cookie Canoe. And in this case it would accommodate 3 of these cookies. So I define that as the longitudinal movement is limited by the number of food items accommodated without the food items overlapping. And then there's the level floor. Now the level floor holds only 1 cookie. I don't redefine the term accommodate, the longitudinal definition for the level floor. I just say that the level floor accommodates only 1 food item. And so longitudinally that's the number that it accommodates. And then finally there's the volume. The volume of the Cookie Canoe needs to be a reasonable amount that somebody would consume for breakfast. And I relate it to the volume of a coffee cup. So I've tried to make my Cookie Canoes about the same volume as a coffee cup. By extending it out, of course the volume increases. The sloped floor helps to limit that increase in volume to actually half what it would be if you went straight out. But it's still an increase in volume, so to compensate I lower the height of the Cookie Canoe to about 2/3 of the height of a coffee cup, and I end up with about the same volume. The way I say that in my application is that it is a desired quantity of milk or fluid. Refers to the amount of fluid that is expected to be consumed by a user during one consumption session. So, of course, coffee cups come in various sizes. You can have huge coffee cups. They also make little itty-bitty coffee cups. And presumably a Cookie Canoe could be made grossly large or extremely tiny. But the idea of the Cookie Canoe is to eat breakfast. So there's a reasonable range of sizes that would make sense for eating breakfast. Now, what I say is for a given intended cookie size, a person in the culinary arts would generally recognize a reasonable range for the desired quantity of fluid. Actually, any person would recognize if a Cookie Canoe is ridiculously large or ridiculously small. And so I depend on that context to distinguish the Cookie Canoe from things like paint trays and swimming pools. Let me compare the Cookie Canoe with a bowl. If you want to soak cookies in milk, presumably you could do it in a bowl. One way is like with cereal and milk. You just put all the cookies in the bowl, pour milk on them, and eat them with a spoon. And I've seen that done before. The problem is some cookies, they don't soak milk the same way cereal does. If you have a cookie in the milk too long, it falls apart, it becomes a mush, and it doesn't taste so great. You really want to have a little bit more control than that over the soaking of the cookies. Now, so you could insert one at a time. And so then you're kind of trying to do the same thing I do with the Cookie Canoe, except the cookies aren't controlled, they're not guided like from one end to another, so they can float around. So you have to be careful to keep track of which cookie was the last one you put in. If you have 3 cookies in there and they all sync together, you could be fishing around for them and you don't know if you're pulling out the one that you most recently put in or the one that's been soaking the longest. With the Cookie Canoe, you have much more control. The Cookie Canoe guides each cookie in sequence, so it's a much more controlled process using the Cookie Canoe. A bowl simply does not provide the control. Now I'll say something about size. I'm willing to claim numeric size limitations. My structural limitations revolve around the concept of accommodating a food item of specific size. The start of my background section establishes a context of a food item that's soaked in multiples, consumed one at a time, and produced with consistency in its dimensions. My intent was for that context to suggest something that's big enough that it would normally be eaten one at a time, yet small enough that it would be eaten in multiples. If that is coming across as ambiguous, then I'm willing to narrow my structural claims to specify numeric dimensions for the sizing of the Cookie Canoe. This size, plus or minus about 30% in volume, is the only size that I expect to be commercially viable. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope this will lead to a productive discussion.